Hey everyone, welcome to the Chilling Hour, where the stories never let you sleep. My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 34 years old, and I don't tell this story for sympathy or attention. I tell it because every time I close my eyes, I can still smell the wet pine needles, hear the crack of wood snapping in the dark, and see that face pressed against the cabin window. This happened in 2019, deep in the Appalachian woods of West Virginia. I was a freelance photographer who specialized in landscape shots. That autumn, I decided to rent a small, isolated cabin for a week to work on a photo collection called Still America. It was supposed to be peaceful, a chance to disconnect from city noise and rediscover what silence felt like. The cabin was owned by a man named Bill Parsons. He was in his 60s, had a gruff voice, and a handshake like a vice. I remember the way he looked at me when I told him I'd be staying there alone. He said, "You're better off leaving before dark. Folks round here don't go walking. Those woods after sundown." I laughed it off, thinking it was small town superstition. He didn't laugh. He just said, "You hear anything call your name at night, you don't answer." It felt like a line out of an old ghost story, but by the time I got to the cabin, that line kept circling in my head. The place sat in a hollow surrounded by thick trees and a creek that ran behind it. The cabin itself looked like something from a postcard: wood walls, stone chimney, small porch. Inside, there was only one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. No cell service, no Wi-Fi. Perfect for what I thought I wanted. The first night was quiet. I built a fire, cooked canned chili, and read by lantern light. But around midnight, I heard something outside. Just faint crunching, like footsteps on dry leaves. I froze. I listened hard, thinking it might be a deer. Then I heard it again, closer this time. Crunch, crunch. I went to the window, looked out, but saw nothing. Just the edge of the woods and my truck parked a few yards away. Still, I had that prickling feeling that someone was watching me. I told myself it was just my nerves, locked the door, and tried to sleep. Sometime during the night, I woke up to a soft knocking. 3 slow taps on the wall beside my bed. Not the door, the wall. I sat up and held my breath. The sound stopped. My heart was racing. I turned on my flashlight and swept it across the room. No one there. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I went outside to take photos of the fog rolling through the trees. That's when I noticed something strange. There were footprints near the cabin. Not boot prints, not animal prints either. Bare feet, human. They led from the edge of the woods straight up to the wall beside my bed. And then they stopped, just vanished. I followed them back toward the trees. They disappeared about 10 feet into the woods, as if whoever made them had just melted into the forest. That night, I double-bolted the door and kept my camera by my bed, thinking maybe I could capture whatever was out there. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again, the same crunching, moving slow around the cabin. I sat up, heart pounding, the lens cap off my camera. Then came something else. A voice. It sounded like it came from just beyond the porch. A man's voice, rough but whispering, "Daniel." I froze. The voice said my name again, dragging it out. "Daniel!" I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I remembered what Bill had said. If you hear anything, call your name at night. Don't answer. The whispering stopped. The woods went dead silent, the kind of silence that hurts your ears. I thought it was over until I heard the voice again. This time, right at the window. "Why won't you answer me?" I turned my flashlight toward the window, and that's when I saw it. A face, pale, gray, pressed against the glass. The eyes were too wide, too dark. The mouth was twisted in a grin that looked wrong, stretched, almost broken. For half a second, I thought it was a person, but then it blinked, and the reflection in its eyes wasn't the room. It was the forest behind me. I dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up again, the face was gone. I wanted to run, but my truck keys were on the kitchen counter, right by that same window. So I waited. I sat in the dark until the first hint of dawn. When the sun rose, I packed everything I could fit into my bag and bolted for the truck. Except, the truck wouldn't start. The battery was dead. I swear to you, it was fine when I parked it. The hood was cold, no sign anyone had messed with it. I popped the latch anyway and saw something carved into the metal near the engine. 3 words scratched deep with something sharp: "Stay with us." I ran back inside and locked the door, shaking. My only hope was the small radio Bill had left in the cabin. It was old, static-filled, but I managed to reach him after about an hour of trying. When I told him what happened, his voice went flat. "Don't leave the cabin," he said. "Whatever you do, don't go into the woods. I'll be there in 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt like 2 days. The noise started again. Not footsteps this time, but tapping all along the walls. Like fingernails drumming slowly, circling the cabin. Then whispering. Not one voice, many. Low, broken whispers coming from every direction. I pressed myself into the corner, hands over my ears. I heard them say things, my name, my mother's name, even parts of conversations I'd had years ago. Voices of people I loved, some dead, some alive. Then the doorknob started to turn. Slowly, back and forth. I stared at it, frozen. And then came the worst sound I've ever heard. It was laughter, a man's laugh. Deep, guttural, but it wasn't coming from outside. It came from inside the cabin, behind me. I spun around, and there, by the fireplace, stood a figure. Tall, thin, naked. Skin stretched so tight over its bones it looked mummified. The eyes were sunken black pits, and the mouth, it was split open far wider than any human mouth should be, almost to the ears. It smiled at me, that same grin from the window. I couldn't move. My mind went blank. The thing tilted its head like it was studying me, then whispered, "We called your name. You should have answered." It stepped forward, and the floor creaked under its feet. I bolted for the door, yanked it open, and ran. I don't remember the trees or the pain in my legs. I just remember the feeling that it was right behind me. I ran until I hit the dirt road, and that's when Bill's old pickup came barreling around the bend. He slammed the brakes, jumped out, and pulled me into the truck before I could even speak. I told him what I saw. He didn't look surprised, just pale. He muttered, "It's the same thing. The same damn thing." I asked him what he meant, but he just drove. Didn't say a word until we hit the main road. Then he said, "There's a reason that cabin's the only one left standing out there. Back in '72, a family stayed there. Husband, wife, 3 kids. They all vanished one night. Cops searched for weeks. Found only the youngest girl, hiding in the crawl space. She kept saying they called her name from the woods, that she saw them outside smiling, but they weren't right. She wouldn't talk after that. Stopped eating. Died the next year in a hospital. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. When we got back to town, Bill insisted I stay at his house for the night. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that grin again. The next morning, I called for a tow to get my truck. The driver came back white as a sheet. He said the cabin was gone. I thought he meant burned down, but no, gone. Like it had never been there, just a clearing with trees growing where it stood. They found my tire tracks leading into the spot and back out, but no sign of the cabin, no foundation, nothing. I asked Bill to take me there, to prove it. He refused, said he wasn't setting foot near that place again. I left West Virginia that same day. But it didn't end there. A few weeks after I got home to Ohio, I started hearing noises in my apartment at night. The same slow tapping. Sometimes I'd wake up and see muddy footprints on the floor near my bed, bare feet, wet and dirty. They'd vanish by morning. Once, while editing photos from that trip, I noticed something strange. In one of the forest shots taken near the cabin, you can see a pale face between 2 trees, watching me. I swear it wasn't there when I took the picture. I've since deleted all the photos. Sold my camera. Moved twice. None of it helped. Last month, I was woken again by that same voice whispering my name from the hallway. Daniel. I turned on the light. No one there. But when I looked at the window, there were handprints on the glass. 5 long, thin fingers and a smear of something dark. I'm staying at a motel now, somewhere anonymous, trying to convince myself it can't follow me forever. But every night, around the same hour, I still hear it. Somewhere outside the door, walking slowly, whispering, waiting for me to answer. If you ever go hiking in the Appalachian woods and find an old cabin that looks too quiet, too perfect, turn around. No photo, no memory, no story is worth what's waiting inside. And if you ever hear someone calling your name at night, especially if you're alone, don't answer. Story, the end.
Story number 2.
My name is Eric Daniels. I'm 36 years old, and what I'm about to tell you isn't some campfire story or creepy urban legend you hear in passing. It happened to me in the fall of 2012, deep in the northern woods of Oregon. I lost 3 of my closest friends that weekend, and no one believes me when I tell them what really happened. But I swear to God, Every word is true. It started with a simple plan, a weekend cabin trip. My buddy Marcus had found this listing on some obscure rental site, a cabin by Crater Lake. The photos looked rustic, but cozy. Wood-burning stove, big windows, a wraparound porch, the kind of place people from the city dream about for peace and quiet. We wanted to escape life for a few days. Me, Marcus, his girlfriend Sarah, and our friend Dylan. We arrived late Friday evening, headlights cutting through a fog that seemed too thick for October. The GPS lost signal miles before the cabin, and we had to follow an old logging road covered in fallen pine needles. When we finally pulled up, the cabin looked exactly like the pictures, maybe better. O-frame structure surrounded by towering pines, the air sharp with the smell of sap and damp earth. But there was something odd right away. The front door was open, just slightly. Marcus laughed it off, said maybe the last guests forgot to close it tight. But when I pushed it open, a cold, stale draft came out, smelling faintly of rot. Inside, everything looked normal. Old furniture, stone fireplace, deer head on the wall. But it was freezing, as if the heater had never worked. We unpacked, lit the fireplace, cracked open beers, and for a while, everything felt fine. We played cards, told jokes, and laughed until midnight. But around 1 a.m, things started to get weird. I went to the kitchen to grab another beer and noticed the back door was open. I could have sworn we'd locked it earlier. I called out, "Hey, who went outside?" No answer. I shut the door, locked it, and went back. 10 minutes later, Sarah screamed. We ran into the living room, and she pointed at the big window facing the woods. A shadow, no, a figure, stood just beyond the porch, still as stone. It looked human, but too tall. I remember its head brushing the edge of the roofline. We froze, all 4 of us staring. Marcus grabbed a flashlight, shone it out there, but the figure was gone. We laughed it off again, nervous laughter this time. Dylan said it was probably a tree, our minds playing tricks in the firelight. But I could see Sarah's hands trembling. Around 3, we went to bed. Marcus and Sarah took the upstairs loft. Dylan and I shared the small room downstairs. I must have dozed off around 4 because the next thing I remember is waking up to heavy footsteps above me. At first, I thought it was Marcus getting up to pee. But then I realized it wasn't just footsteps. It was dragging. Something heavy was being dragged across the floor, slow and uneven, like dead weight. I whispered, "Marcus?" No answer. Then came the thud, like something dropping, hard. I was fully awake now, heart pounding. Dylan was snoring softly beside me. I shook him awake, told him to listen. He sat up, eyes bleary. We both heard it this time, faint footsteps moving toward the stairs, creaking one by one. Then silence. I grabbed the flashlight and opened the door just a crack. The stairs were empty. I aimed the beam upward, nothing. But the air felt wrong, like the pressure had changed, as if we were underwater. Dylan whispered, "Maybe it's an animal." Then came the whisper. It was a woman's voice, soft and hollow, drifting through the hallway. "Get out." Dylan froze. "You heard that, right?" he whispered. I nodded, too afraid to breathe. The voice came again, clearer now, closer. "Get out." We slammed the door shut and didn't move until daylight. When we finally stepped out in the morning, Marcus and Sarah were gone. Their bed was empty, sheets rumpled. No note, no sign of them. We searched the cabin, then the woods. I shouted their names until my throat hurt. Nothing. We found Marcus's phone on the porch, screen cracked, still warm. His flashlight was lying a few feet away in the dirt, pointing toward the tree line. Dylan wanted to leave right away, but the car keys were missing. Marcus had been driving. We tore through the cabin looking for them. While searching, I found something strange. Behind an old bookshelf, there was a small door. It wasn't in any of the photos from the listing. The door was low, maybe 3 feet high, and made of dark, rough wood. A small iron latch kept it shut. I called Dylan over. "You ever see this before?" He shook his head. When I pulled it open, a wave of cold air hit us. Inside was a crawl space, narrow and pitch black. I shined the flashlight inside and nearly dropped it. There were carvings on the walls, hundreds of them. Symbols, faces, words I couldn't recognize. And in the far corner, bones. Small ones, child-sized. Dylan slammed the door shut and said, "We're leaving. Now." We packed what we could carry and started walking down the dirt road, figuring we'd hitchhike or find a ranger station. After about an hour, we came across an old sign half buried in moss. It said, "West Ridge Cabin, private property, keep out." But here's the thing. We were heading away from the cabin. We hadn't passed this sign before. It felt like we were walking in circles. The woods started to look different. Trees bent at strange angles, bark peeling like skin, and the silence. God, it was total. Not a bird, not a breeze. Just that suffocating quiet. Then we heard it again, the dragging. Behind us. We ran. I don't even remember how long. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Eventually we stumbled back into the clearing, and there was the cabin. The same damn cabin we were trying to escape. Dylan fell to his knees, screaming. I tried calling for help, but there was no signal, no sound, but our own panic. That's when the door creaked open by itself. Marcus stood there. At least, I thought it was Marcus. His clothes were the same, flannel shirt, jeans, but his eyes were black, not like bruised or bloodshot, but literally black. His head twitched, jerking side to side like a puppet with broken strings. Sarah stood behind him, pale as paper. She whispered, "You shouldn't have opened the door." Before I could respond, the door slammed shut and the windows shattered inward. The air filled with screaming, thousands of overlapping voices. Dylan grabbed my arm, yanking me toward the woods again, but something grabbed him. I swear I saw a hand, gray, long-fingered, reach out from the shadows of the porch and wrap around his ankle. He screamed as it dragged him backward into the dark. I tried to pull him, but he was gone in seconds, his voice fading into that horrible chorus of whispers. I ran. I didn't stop until I saw the faint glow of headlights, a truck on the road. I burst out of the woods, covered in dirt and blood, waving my arms like a maniac. The driver stopped, an old guy in a logging jacket. He took one look at me and said, "You came from up there, didn't you?" I nodded, trying to speak, but he just shook his head slowly. "Ain't been anyone up at that cabin for years," he said. "Burned down in the 80s. Killed a family inside." I told him that wasn't possible, that I'd stayed there last night, that my friends were still there. But he just looked at me with pity. "Son," he said, "there's nothing up there but ashes." He drove me to the nearest town, where I told the police everything. They searched the area the next day. You know what they found? Nothing. No cabin. No car. No Marcus. No Sarah. No Dylan. Just a clearing with blackened earth, like something had been burned a long time ago. For weeks, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it all, that maybe I'd gone crazy from stress or exhaustion. But then, 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, there was silence at first. Then a familiar voice, Dylan's voice, whispered, "You shouldn't have opened the door." The line went dead. That night, I dreamed of the cabin. I saw the crawlspace again, and the carvings. Only this time, I could read them. They were names, hundreds of them, and mine was the last one etched in fresh wood. I woke up with dirt under my nails and a splinter in my hand. I don't remember leaving my bed. Since then, every few months, I hear tapping on my window around 3 a.m., just light, deliberate taps. When I look, there's nothing there. No footprints, no branches, no wind, just silence. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear the dragging. Story the end.
Story number 3.
My name is Eric Walters, and I'm 33 years old. What I'm about to tell you is something I've tried to forget for nearly a decade. I've gone to therapy, taken sleeping pills, even tried hypnosis once. None of it helped. The memories don't fade, they fester, replaying in my mind every night around the same time the woods outside my window start to move. It all began in October 2015. My friends and I decided to rent a cabin deep in the Black Hills of South Dakota. We wanted a break from the noise of the city, a weekend away from phones, work, and people. There were 5 of us, me, my girlfriend at the time, Hannah, my best friend Derek, his cousin Luke, and Luke's girlfriend Melissa. The cabin was an old wooden structure built sometime in the early 1900s, according to the owner. It stood miles away from the nearest town, hidden behind a curtain of pines. The driveway was just a dirt trail winding through the woods, and by the time we arrived, the sun was dipping below the treetops, the world tinted in orange and gray. I remember the way the air felt heavy the moment we stepped out of the car, thick, cold, and too quiet. No wind, no birds, just silence. It was the kind of stillness that made you whisper without realizing it. Inside, the cabin smelled like old wood and damp earth. The walls were lined with animal heads, elk, deer, even a black bear. There was a fireplace made of stone, a creaky staircase leading to a narrow loft, and a set of antique lamps that flickered even when we turned them off. The owner, an old man named Mr. Carson, had met us at the door earlier that day when we picked up the key. Before we left, he'd said something strange. Open quote, "Don't stay out past dark. The woods don't like visitors." Close quote. We all laughed it off, thinking he was just trying to add some local flavor to the experience. I wish I'd taken him seriously. That first night, we drank, played cards, and told ghost stories by the fire. Hannah was sitting on my lap, teasing Derek about his poker face when we heard it, the faintest sound of knocking on the side of the cabin. It wasn't loud, more like a slow, deliberate tap against the wood. 3 times. Then silence. We thought maybe it was an animal, a branch in the wind. Luke went outside to check, but when he came back, his face was pale. Open quote, "There's no wind," he said quietly. And no tracks. Nothing. Close quote. The second night, things got worse. We decided to go for a walk just before sunset. There was a narrow trail behind the cabin that led down to a small lake. The trees were skeletal and close together, their bare branches clawing at the sky. About half a mile in, we found something odd, a small wooden cross hammered into the ground with animal bones scattered around its base. Melissa thought it was some kind of hunting marker, but Derek said it looked more like a memorial. The cross had been carved by hand, rough and splintered, with faint letters scratched into the wood. It looked like initials. EM. We didn't stay long. The air got colder, and the forest seemed to hum with a low vibration, almost like the sound of whispering just beyond hearing range. That night, I woke up around 3:14 a.m. to the sound of footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps circling the cabin. I held my breath and listened. The others were asleep upstairs, but I was on the couch downstairs, closest to the front door. The footsteps stopped near the window. I could feel someone, or something, looking in. The glass was fogged, but I could just barely make out a pale shape behind it. Then a handprint appeared on the glass, long fingers, pressed hard enough to leave a streak. I jumped up and grabbed the flashlight. When I shone it toward the window, the shape vanished. I ran outside, yelling, but the woods swallowed my voice. There were no footprints in the dirt. The next morning, I told everyone what I'd seen. Derek believed me. The others thought it was lack of sleep. But when Hannah went to wash dishes, she called us into the kitchen. There, right above the sink, carved into the wooden wall, were the same initials we'd seen in the woods. E.M. Luke. Tried to brush it off as coincidence, but the marks were fresh. The wood was splintered, raw, like it had been carved just hours before. That evening, we decided to leave first thing in the morning. But that night, we never made it to morning. Around midnight, we heard the sound again, knocking, louder this time, coming from all sides of the cabin. The lamps flickered. Something scratched along the door, like nails dragging down the wood. Hannah was crying, Melissa was praying, and Luke was shouting at whatever was outside. He opened the door before we could stop him. I'll never forget what I saw. There was nothing there, just black woods. But the darkness between the trees, something moved in it. A figure, tall and wrong, like a person but stretched. Its head was tilted too far to one side, and its arms hung too long, its skin grayish-white like old ash. It stepped forward, and I saw its face, or what was left of it. No eyes, no lips, just a hollow mouth that seemed to tremble like smoke. We slammed the door shut, shoved a table in front of it. Derek grabbed the poker from the fireplace. The knocking stopped. Then came the whispering. Not from outside, from inside the cabin. It was coming from the loft, above us. Luke climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Hello," he whispered. The whispering stopped. Then something slammed into him so hard he flew backward down the steps. His neck twisted at an impossible angle. Melissa screamed. Derek rushed to him, but Luke was gone. His eyes were open, staring blankly toward the ceiling. The lamps exploded, one by one. The fire died, plunging us into darkness. And then in the flickering light of my flashlight, I saw movement by the stairs. The thing was crawling down, fast, impossibly fast. We ran into the kitchen, slammed the door, and barricaded it with chairs. Something was scratching on the other side, whispering our names. My name. Over and over. Eric. The voice was Luke's. It kept calling, begging us to open the door, to help him. But I'd seen his body. I knew it wasn't him. We hid there until the sound stopped. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I don't know. Time didn't exist in that place anymore. Eventually, the sun started to rise, faint light bleeding through the cracks in the shutters. When I finally opened the door, the kitchen was empty. The main room was destroyed. The table was splintered, the walls covered in scratches. Luke's body was gone. We didn't wait. We grabbed what we could and ran to the car. The woods felt alive, whispering, shifting. I swear I saw faces in the trees as we sped down that dirt road. When we reached the nearest town, I told the sheriff what happened. He sent a search team back to the cabin, but they found nothing. No sign of Luke, no carvings, not even the initials. Just an empty, abandoned cabin. The owner, Mr. Carson, denied ever renting it out. Said the property had been condemned for over 20 years. The others, they changed after that. Hannah left me a few months later. She said she couldn't stand the nightmares, the sound of knocking that followed her home. Derek stopped talking about it completely. Melissa moved away and never answered my calls again. But me? I can't escape it. Because sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still hear the knocking. Slow. 3 times. And when I look out my window, I see a pale shape in the woods. Last winter, I found a small wooden cross near my backyard, freshly carved, with the same letters, E.M. Mill. I've never been back to South Dakota, never gone camping again. But sometimes when the house is quiet, I can feel it, like the cabin followed me home. Like something's waiting, patient and hungry, just beyond the trees. If you ever rent a cabin out in the woods and an old man tells you the woods don't like visitors, listen to him. Don't go. Don't look for adventure. Because once the woods notice you, they don't let you go. Story the end.